कितने पैसे चाहिए?
पैसा नहीं इज्जत। मोहल्ले के चिरकुट लौंडे हरा रहे मैं फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स में। आप एक्सपर्ट हो, सिखाओ।
सिखाऊंगा तो जाने दोगे? हाँ।
फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स का
असली अखाड़ा।
इस गेम में वित्तीय जोखिम के तत्व हैं और इसकी लत लग सकती है। कृपया जिम्मेदारी से और अपने जोखिम पर खेलें।
Hello and welcome to the Outside View powered by Fantasy Akhada. So there's a lot of excitement, a little bit of nervousness there, a little bit of bad throat from my end, but that ain't keeping us away from talking cricket. So Sri Lanka and India are all set to lock horns with each other for the second T20I. And joining me in the pre-show are our experts, Mohit, Shah and Annesha Ghosh. Welcome both of you to the show.
Thank you.
So let's just begin with so let's just begin with how's the mood around there, Annesha. India, of course, they have a winning momentum by their side, and we always talk that in a series, if you have that momentum, you enter the match probably with a positive mindset. So India have a little bit of edge to it.
Well, certainly, especially given the fact that they were able to defend what was not a formidable total, 138 odd wasn't too imposing for a team like India to have posted, but they faltered with the bat initially. But Jemimah Rodriguez and Deepti Sharma made sure that they got India close to what could be a competitive total. In the end, it did prove more than competitive because Sri Lanka had their own batting woes to deal with. There were collapses, and save for Kavisha Dulhari, there wasn't much of an impact made by any of their batters. So the momentum certainly is with India. And should they be able to put a better batting performance today, I'm pretty sure they will have the series, the T20I series in the bag.
Okay, then we have an update on the toss here from the middle that Sri Lanka have won the toss and they have elected to bat first. So we saw in the last game, Mohit, that India also took the same decision. So do you think from Sri Lanka's perspective, it is good to put runs on the board and then go on and defend it?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good decision. Like, I personally feel that bowling is their strength, and they got an opportunity to bowl first last time and also did a pretty good job of restricting India to a decentish total, which they had more than a good chance of chasing down. But because they didn't even get close in the chase, and because they have a lot of young and inexperienced batters, I think, and with it being an afternoon start, they probably just feel that it's better to bat first so that their young batters have the freedom to just go and play their natural game without there being scoreboard pressure. So I think that's probably the logic behind them opting to bat first this time round.
Definitely. And as we say that Sri Lanka, of course, at their home, and any team always looks to make most of the home conditions out there, Anisha. So it's obvious that they're having a little bit of pressure out there, but probably chasing down the total would put them under a lot more pressure considering their batting woes in recent times.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tight rope to walk for a captain like Chamari Athapattu, knowing hers is not the most experienced side, as Mohit alluded to earlier, but they've got to try out as many options as possible because they've got to save the series. This is pretty much the series decider. In case they go down losing, they are out of the equation in terms of trying to win the series. So I think it's a good punt. Whether or not it comes off, a majority of that would depend on how Chomari Athapattu operates with the bat today. She wasn't quite successful in the previous game, and Harshita Madhavi too will need to put her hand up. And the flaky middle order that we often speak of, and them being prone to collapses, that's something they will be wary of. So they too wouldn't be looking to post anything, close to maybe a 140. They know that on their day, should they be able to even score 120 odd, given their bowling lineup, as Mohit mentioned, it should be a good score because India, as we saw, they have a few creases to iron out. So 120 odd should be their first target in terms of setting a score. And should they be able to step on the gas and motor on towards 130, 135 odd, 140. Look, if Chamari Athaputtu and Harshita Madhavi are able to lay a good platform early on, and should they have, in case they have retained their opener Gunaratne, I'm not sure of the playing 11. She too would be looking to make amends because she too fell cheaply in the first game. So it's a bit of a tricky situation for them, but they've got to try out as many options as they can. And batting first should give them some confidence in terms of not being under the scoreboard pressure, as Mohit mentioned earlier.
Definitely. So they wouldn't want that scoreboard pressure, and that's why the team has opted to bat first. But as you rightly mentioned, Anisha, a lot of hopes will now be pinned on Chamari Attapattu, the captain. She's been leading from the front for the side in the Pakistan season. The last game we saw that she hit a century out there. And today, if Sri Lanka have to save the series, we all know that the fans and the Sri Lankan team as well will hope that we see a good innings and a good knock coming in there from the captain. If you have to talk about her record, it's not that pleasing. She hasn't had scored a half century in this format in home conditions. Mohit, so how do you see her approaching this game? Because we know that when the team needs the most, it's when we pin our hopes on the champion players.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is actually a great start, which was put out by Shajin Mohan in our preview as well. And I think that's very interesting because you'd expect a player like Chamari Attapattu, who's played 30 innings at home, to at least have 4 or 5 50s, if not more. And she's one of the better T20 players going around, has done really well in the biggest stages in tournaments involving players from multiple nations. So it's a really strange thing, but I think Chamari herself has said this many times that and we've seen it ourselves too, that she's the kind of player who really enjoys conditions where the ball is bouncing a lot or where there's a lot of pace on offer in the bowling attack. Like if you look at her record against a team like Australia, it's excellent. Her record in Australia is excellent. She has a very good record in India and South Africa as well. And all of these are like conditions where you get good true wickets, like which are good for batting. Like where you play good cricketing shots, you will get reward for it. So I think Chamari's strength is her play against pace. She's not a bad player at all of spin, but I just feel like her options are a little less when it comes to facing spin. And there's also a lot of pressure sometimes because she's the only one in that top order who's capable of finding boundaries regularly in the power play. So like last match, she was going along fine, 16 of 18, but then the asking rate was getting out of hand because there was no runs that were coming in from the other end. Like Vishmi got out very early, and the one down batter Harshita also was struggling to rotate the strike. So she had to go for the big shot early against a ball which probably wasn't there for that shot. So I think the lack of support from the other end and the conditions in Sri Lanka don't really help her. But at the same time, she's a class player. If India play an unchanged side, there are two left arm spinners in the attack, and she's very good against the ball coming into her. So I think the better option for Chamari would be to take it easy in the power play, just see out the threat that Deepti Sharma poses because she's a great bowler to left-handers, has a very good arm ball. Last match we saw it, like Chamari played the arm ball well, to be fair to her, but yeah, just like see out Deepti Sharma and then take the attack to Rajeshwari Gaikwad and Radha Yadav.
Definitely. And as you rightly mentioned, that she has a little bit of more options against pace, but when it comes to spin, the entire Sri Lankan batting unit have to make sure that they tackle spin well in this game. And then we talk about Deepti Sharma Anisha, because we saw with the bat also she came in and then she gave those quick runs to the team, but with the ball as well, she did a good job. And she would be a threat for the Sri Lankan batters today.
Absolutely. We spoke at length about Harmanpreet Kaur bringing her on in the power play because she oozed a lot of confidence at the Women's T20 Challenge with the shouldering captaincy duties and also making sure that she makes a statement with the ball. I remember asking her at one of the press conferences if that was a conscious ploy for her, just like Sophie Eccleston is doing with the bat. You know, she's gone on record in many interviews saying she wants to bat higher up the England order, wants to take the place of Catherine Brunt as far as the bowling all-rounders role goes. So here is Deepti Sharma saying, look, I'm good enough to bowl in the power play, not just to contain, but I'm here to give you a breakthrough. So captain, give me the ball and I'll make sure I'll deliver the goods. And that's exactly what she did in the first T20I, made sure she was bowling in the power play and did reasonably well. Her contribution with the bat must have given her a lot of confidence going into that chase because with Jemima Rodrigues, she played a critical role in ensuring that India were able to get close to a competitive total. She scored 17 odd runs of 8 balls, if I'm not mistaken, and 3 fours. You know, that 20-run final over was terrific for India. And though Jemima Rodrigues was the one who sealed it off with a 6, those boundaries, those fours from Deepti Sharma and the fist bumps that we saw did inject a lot of confidence in the Indian lineup. So here is one of the best all-rounders in international cricket at the moment, putting her hand up and showing, come on with the games, bring it on. I'm ready to be one of the power play bowlers that India needs, and also give them the kind of breakthroughs that are required to get the ascendancy India's way.
Definitely. And as you said that the use of Deepti Sharma in the power play and the use of bowlers, like we've seen that Harmanpreet Kaur is probably an attacking captain out there, likes to express herself on the field. What do you make of her captaincy, Mohit? Because we've seen that India dominated the proceedings in the first T20. They would like to do something like that in this game as well and get the series victory. That would be a great positive for them ahead of the Commonwealth Games as well.
Yeah, I've always been a very big fan of Herman's captaincy, and like Annesha rightly alluded to during the last match, like she's started to come into her own over the past couple of years or so since that T20 World Cup in Australia. Like earlier, sometimes you could see that she was a little unsure. She was still working her way through captaincy. But I think like she has been a long-term captain of Punjab in the domestic circuit, has captained Supernovas for 4 seasons, and like playing abroad in leagues like the 100 and the BBL, the WBBL has really helped her because she might not be in a leadership role there, but Harman is the kind of player who always has a lot of suggestions and wants to be involved in the game. So I'm pretty sure that she's a big voice in those overseas dressing rooms as well when she plays in those leagues. And like she said in the press conference before the series as well, now that she's the all format captain, there's like a lot more freedom for her to execute things the way she wants to execute them, which probably wasn't there earlier because there were like different voices in the leadership group, and there wasn't just one voice which had the ultimate responsibility, and there were senior players that were around. But I really like her approach to the game. Like I think she got most of her bowling changes spot on in the last match. It was good of her to also bowl herself and Shafali Verma because the top six in India's batting lineup do need to chip in with 2 or 3 overs in case any of the lead bowlers have a bad day. So I think her captaincy in the first match was really good, and really looking forward to what kind of approach the Indian team has in the field, and especially with the bat, because sometimes that initiative has been lacking with the bat in the past. Maybe because players are insecure about their spots in the team or their roles haven't been defined very clearly. But with Harman, we've seen it at the Supernovas. Players generally get a very long run. Once she has your trust in you, she will give you the entire series to prove your worth. And she's also very good at communicating with the younger players. So, yeah, lots to look forward to in Harman's captaincy.
Lots to look forward to, and of course we have two changes there in the Indian squad as well. Let's have a look at the playing 11 of both Sri Lanka and India, and we'll get to see what combinations we're going to see in today's match. So from the Indian side, we see there that Simran Dil Bahadur has been included. Rajeshwari Gaikwad is not included in this squad, and then of course we have Yastika Bhatia coming in for Richa Ghosh. So obviously in the last game we saw like Sri Lankan side, if we talk about, of course, Chamaria Tapatu captains the side, Harshita Madhvi is there. A lot of hopes will be there on the all-rounder there. Kavisha Dilhari was in a good form in the last match as well. It's going to be an interesting contest. But as you rightly mentioned that when it comes to the T20I format of the game, it becomes very important for us to make sure that the fielding is spot on, Anisha. We saw a couple of dropped catches in last match as well. So taking that into consideration, how do you see both the teams shaping up for this contest? Because it becomes important. A run saved probably is a run scored.
Certainly, there were guilty parties in both teams. We saw Harmanpreet Kaur being dropped once in the deep, and even the Indians were to blame on a couple of occasions. These are the things that go on to be the point of difference in T20Is, because you cannot afford to make those errors like this. Shafali Verma dropped pretty much what was a sitter towards the side screen. So hopefully there will be less of that, and the eventuality of this game is decided more on the quality of the battle between bat and ball, and also of the fielding. So that's something both teams will need to be cautious about. And with the inclusion of Simran Dil Bahadur, I'm pretty sure there will be greater energy on the field. She's also one of the better fielders. Is immensely quick. I love watching Temba Bavuma in the men's game. You know, the kind of sprint he puts in. He's one of the quickest runners in the women's game. Simranjit Bahadur, probably she'll beat most when it comes to 100-meter sprints at training. I'm not too sure of the specifics or how the yo-yo tests must have been shaping up in the recent past, given the influx of youngsters, so many youngsters in the Indian mix. But Simranjit Bahadur should also look to inject some energy, some enthusiasm on the field, and there would be greater alertness on the part of the other fielders because India have historically required to hide so many of their fielders, in critical positions, and that's also a reason perhaps I personally feel Kiran Navgire was not picked because we saw while she's a superb batter, she's got the raw power. She was quite susceptible on the field and a bit of a liability, in fact, because that did go on to play in her not making the cut. So hopefully that's something Kiran Navgire will figure out and fix. And here is an opportunity for both Sri Lanka and India to make amends on the field and at least not drop sitters.
Yes, definitely. And as you mentioned about Simran Dil Bahadur, we see there are two inclusions and two changes out there in the Indian side. Simran Dil Bahadur coming in and Yastika Bhatia coming in. Let's first touch upon the Simran Dil Bahadur inclusion there. We saw in the Women's T20 Challenge, of course, with the bat, she came in there, played a good cameo, but was quite impressive with the ball as well. And we were probably trying to see where does she fits into the Indian setup, Mohit.
Yeah, I was honestly a little surprised that she wasn't picked in the first match because she was by some distance the best Indian medium pacer in the T20 challenge, other than Pooja Vastrakar, who's already an established name and an all rounder. So I would ideally have picked her in the first T20 itself because, like Annesha rightly said, she's easily one of the best fielders, not just in Indian cricket, but in world cricket. Very good in the close in positions in the inner ring, has a very good arm as well, very good in the outfield, very quick, like Annesha said. I agree. I don't think there's anyone quicker than her in the outfield. Harleen Deol probably, but she's not a part of the T20 squad. And Simran actually reminds me a lot of a player like Rumeli Dhar. Like she's probably not in the same league as Rumeli in terms of her bowling yet, but in terms of her attitude. Like this is a young girl who's always willing to bowl the difficult overs. Like if you saw when she was bowling in the T20 challenge, it was almost always after the 12 over mark. So she was getting through her 3-4 overs in the end overs, which is not easy at all. And she still like bowled pretty well, got a lot of wickets. There were a couple of catches that were dropped off her bowling as well in that tournament. And she knows her restrictions well. Like she's not a bowler who has a lot of pace or swings it a long way, but she gets the basics right. And her game awareness, I think, is really improved. She's a senior player in the Delhi team. She leads the bowling group there. So I think that has helped her a lot. And I think like she's somebody who India should definitely look at giving a long run because death overs is a big problem for India. And she might be one of the possible solutions to it.
Definitely. And if you have to see the other change there is Yastika Bhatia. We'll see her behind the stumps in the first innings now. We know that her glove work is quite impressive there. In the Women's 20 Challenge, we saw that a lot of chatter was going on from behind the stumps out there. What do you make of this inclusion, Anish, of course? Because Richa Ghosh, she was quite a little bit of struggling with her form to get those big runs. But Yastika Bhatia, on the other hand, we've seen her make most of the opportunities so far that she's received.
And it's a good decision. Although I would have liked, as I mentioned in one of the pre-series chats, that players should be given a bit of a long walk, maybe 2 games, especially if India don't go down in the opener. But yeah, they've made 2 changes interesting, and Yastika Bhatia coming in is perhaps warranted because Richa Ghosh hasn't looked the kind of player she was on the tour of Australia. As she was amongst the runs, and here she's probably a bit low on confidence. But Yastika has been that kind of a player you can turn to whenever there looks to be some errors that need fixing, or she is quite a bit of a troubleshooter that has appeared on the international scene for India. With the gloves too, she's alert, she's agile, and that should be a big confidence booster for India as well. And she did score, some runs in the women's T20 challenge for Velocity, who were one of the finalists, were runners up. And given the kind of 12 months Yastika Bhatia has had, I think this should be a good opportunity for her to further strengthen her case towards inclusion in the Commonwealth Games playing 11 as well, because as we mentioned earlier, she is shoe in the ODI side. There is no questioning her place in the ODI side given her run of form in the recent past. But there are so many other players in the mix who can put their hand up on their day and say, they too should be considered for a place in the T20I side. So with so much competition around those middle order spots, number 4, number 5, I think Yastika Bhatia will or should make the most of this opportunity. And the left hand option also gives another dimension to the Indian 11. Though there are so many left-handers now, Smriti Mandana, Deepti Sharma, Yastika Bhatia, Simranjit Bahadur, off spinners, Oshadi Ranasinghe. We see them bowl out their full allotment of overs early on, and even Inoka Ranavira with her left arm spin. So that's going to be an interesting matchup because there are 4 left armers, left-hand batters in the Indian side, in this Indian side for the second T20I.
Well, as Annesha has pointed out for us, it's going to be interesting contest. And if we speak of India's bowling there, we saw that probably 12 overs of spin was bowled in the last game. Rajeshwari Gaikwad isn't playing in today's match. How do you look at that decision, Mohit? And of course, we know that India is a spin-heavy side currently. The spinners looked in good touch in the last match as well. How do you see the bowling unit approaching this game?
Yeah, like Annesha said rightly in the last match and today as well, I'm not a big fan of chopping and changing after just one game. In the case of Richa Ghosh, you could still understand it because she's a young player who's struggling for form. So maybe the time away might just help her like it did for Shafali during the World Cup. She was going through a really lean phase in her last 4 or 5 innings. She was benched for a couple of matches and then she came out in the presser and said that she worked a lot with Shiv Sundar Das in the nets, and that just helped her to clear her mind and play her natural game after that. So I think that's probably the idea behind benching Richa because otherwise, Yastika's a top order batter. Jemmy was already batting at number 5 in the last game. So I don't know, like you don't want Jemmy or Harman to be batting at number 6 because it's too low and Yastika's not ideally suited for the lower middle order yet, simply because she's never batted there. Coming to the bowling side of things, though, since India are bowling first, we don't know if Rajeshwari Gaikwad's fully fit. There might be a slight niggle because even in the last match, he bowled just 1 over. Maybe that was because India had already like more or less sealed the match, and Harman wanted to experiment and get in a few overs from herself and Shafali. But I think Rajeshwari probably will be one of the first names in the playing 11 during the big matches, and they just wanted to give a run into somebody like Simran, who probably hasn't played that much of T20 cricket. Because with Rajeshwari, you know what you are going to get. She's a proven performer. Like playing a couple of matches against Sri Lanka won't make a big difference to her CV or her skills because she's been there, she's done that. Whereas for someone like Simran, if she ends up with a 2 for here or a 3 for or a quick 20 of 8 balls, it will do a huge deal of good to her confidence. And it also gives India another option. So players like Simran, Radha Yadav, Radha's very experienced in T20Is, but she's still very young. So they need a lot more confidence than somebody like Rajeshwari Gaikwad. So I think the idea is to just give other players an opportunity, and I don't think she has been dropped as such.
Definitely, and as you said, that it gives other players the opportunity, and probably someone like Radha Yadav, as you said, she's still young. That would be a greater opportunity for her again to show and continue her good form in today's match. That was a good positive that she picked up wickets in the last match, Anisha.
100% for a player like Radha Yadav, we know that she's able to deliver consistency for a prolonged period of time, as she did during a terrific run of form she had soon after her debut. In 2019, there were 21 or 22 odd matches where she ended up taking at least one wicket in every game. So that speaks to the caliber of a bowler like her. She's aggressive. She likes to get under the skin of batters. We remember the send off that she had given Alisa Healy in the World Cup final. Even there was Alisa Healy going all guns blazing, scoring a terrific 70 odd runs in by far the biggest occasion in women's cricket. But there was Radha Yadav giving her the look on Alisa Healy's way back. So we know that she likes a good competition, she likes a good challenge, and she hates losing. She's one of those players who wears her heart on her sleeves, and like Harmanpreet, she likes to be out there, put her hand up, and as a fielder too, she's very very good. So with her having taken those 2 wickets, if I'm not mistaken, in the first game, they were not essentially wicket-taking deliveries. It was more the batters offering their wickets as gifts rather than Radha Yadav showing her technical or showing her aptitude with the ball. But nonetheless, they added to Radha Yadav's T20I wicket tally. So in case she is able to continue from where she left off in the first T20I, even a couple of wickets will do a lot of good to her confidence and also to Harmanpreet, because Harmanpreet has played with her in the Women's T20 Challenge. Radha Yadav had memorably hit the winning runs in the 2019 edition in Jaipur with Harman and the non-strikers, and or perhaps Harman was in the dugout, but Radha Yadav is a crucial cog in India's batting wheel as well. So in case she is able to refine her or reinvent the kind of form she exuded early on in her career, I'm pretty sure she'll start coming good with the bat as well, if and when the opportunities arise.
An important cog Radha Yadav is, and probably it's the Sri Lankan batting unit who have to be aware about it, and that's why we have seen one change from there. Hasini Pereira has been included. She has experience under her sleeves, Mohit, and that's what Sri Lanka probably were thinking, that they need experience in a game like this, which in a way is a decider today.
Yeah, you couldn't have put it any better. Vastly experienced batter, top order batter, generally opens the innings, not opening the batting today because young Vishmi is opening the batting. But yeah, like Ama Kanchana didn't do too much wrong. Bowled one decent over, got a runner ball 11 in the dying stages of the last match. But yeah, like you said, it's purely a move to bolster their batting because clearly that is their weakness. And Hasini Pereira, like you said, has a lot of experience. So they'll be hoping that she shows that experience and takes charge of those middle overs for Sri Lanka in case somebody like Chamari Atapattu gets dismissed early again.
Definitely. So let's just take predictions from our experts. Coming to you, Annesha, first. How much are Sri Lanka scoring? What's going to be the first innings total?
I think subject to Chamari Atapattu getting at least 30 runs, Sri Lanka should be able to get 130, 135 odd. Should she get a half century, the target will obviously be higher for India. But 130 odd should be a good start. 120 to begin with, because we know that theirs is a flaky sort of a batting order. A lot of inexperience in there. So 120 odd with their bowling should be a good target to aim for originally. And then should they get going early in the power play and are able to find those partnerships which eluded them in the first T20I, probably even a 135, 140 could be on the cards, which should be more than a competitive on this particular surface because they're playing on the same surface, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, right. So 135 was a competitive one in the last game as well. So Mohit, what are your views on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Annesha. Actually, I think they'll be better off targeting 120 initially because they've not touched that score in their last 4 T20Is. So 120 is a good target to aim for with their bowling attack. And then if Chamari Atapattu's in after 10-12 overs, they can definitely get something around 140 as well. But my prediction would be Sri Lanka again getting dismissed between 100 and 110, as has been the case of late.
Definitely. So India would look to take this win and seal the series. On the other hand, Sri Lanka would want to keep their hopes alive. Our experts have put things into perspective for us. Let's see how the action unfolds in the first innings, and we will join you for the mid-show. Until then, for all the updates on women's cricket, you know where you need to tune in, only to Women's Cricket Zone.
ये पक्का अब सीख तो गए, अब तो जाने दो मुझे।
ठहर जाइए, कोई प्रॉब्लम हो गई तो कहाँ ढूंढेंगे आपको?
फैंटेसी अखाड़ा का 24/7 कस्टमर सर्विस है, आपकी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करवा देंगे।
कल जाने देंगे।
फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स का असली अखाड़ा।
इस गेम में वित्तीय जोखिम के तत्व हैं और इसकी लत लग सकती है। कृपया जिम्मेदारी से और अपने जोखिम पर खेलें।